So I'm using ShopBirdy MCP with a brand new agentic flow. This is actually really cool. What I did was I took 12 very well-known brands. These are luxury brands. So think about Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Prada, Dior, Fendi, Celine, Burberry, Hugo Boss, Montblanc, Comme des Garçons, Omega, Tag Heuer, and I want this ShopBirdy MCP service to create a billboard for each of these brands. And when it's doing that creation, I'm also trying to make sure that we optimize how we generate the image, because each image can only use a certain amount of tokens. So how you allocate those tokens matters a lot. It affects the quality of the image. So for example, if you have a very richly detailed background, you're trading off some of those tokens with what you can use to actually portray your product. If you have people, for example, and you use tokens on creating facial features and the human form, that is going to take some of the allocated budget of the tokens for the product. So I've been playing around with this to try to figure this out, and I'm going to go ahead and have the agent continue with its task. One of the things I've done though is I've taken this kind of marketing brief. I've given the agent a mix of information. Some of it is about the actual brands. So what the brand represents, what are the sort of target, what's the brand strategy? Who's their target customer? How do they position themselves in the marketplace? So we have those details. We also give it a lot of good details about how our agentic system works. So how to call the tools, if there's an error, how do you retry, and other things like that. I also wanted to give the agent a lot of creative freedom. So rather than giving it very direct prompts for it to produce an image based on this exact prompt, I'm actually giving it more like inspiration, telling it some of the things it can choose from, like the lighting style, the time of day, other kind of camera depth of field things. And then I'm allowing it to use these kind of prompt builders as building blocks to create a really nice image. So what these images look like are something like this. So this could be for Burberry, for example. This is Celine. Now in this version, we actually didn't generate any product for Celine. Well, perhaps the fashion, the jacket here is the product, but we ended up using quite a lot of tokens on this background and then creating the model itself. I kind of feel like, although AI has passed the Turing test, meaning we can chat with it and it sounds like a real human, for me, the uncanny valley is the next challenge. So how do we make realistic looking people? Like for example, this image would look fantastic if it were rendered correctly, but as we can see here, the model's hand is like a bit detached from the rest of the body. So unfortunately, this wouldn't pass the QA test. Here, if we zoom in very close on the logo and the details of the product, then we allocate our tokens towards that and we can produce really nice results. So this is for Fendi, for example. This one I think is also really cool. The overall prompt for this is to create localized versions of almost like brand marketing, advertising creative, billboards for these global brands, but that could work within a Bangkok context. So it uses a lot of vibrant colors. It could use some sunset themes and other things like that. I will continue. The agent here is working in batches of 3 or 4 at a time. So it's generating the images, it's running QA on it, and then it is figuring out if it passes or fails, downloading them, and then or retrying. So here we have kind of a models, and then the product here is Hugo Boss, but as we can see, the logo is not using the correct letters, and this kind of jacket is just hanging out here. We ended up spending probably too many tokens on the human form, and then the product itself did not get generated. In this instance, this would look fantastic, and I believe that we'll eventually get to the point where we can generate this very consistently. But if you zoom in, you can notice that the iconic Louis Vuitton pattern motif is not shapen correctly. And part of that, again, is due to the fact that we ended up allocating a number of tokens on the background scene. In this case, this is the iconic Wat Arun in Bangkok. So that looks fantastic, but we lost some key details on what is probably the most iconic thing about Louis Vuitton. So unfortunately, this wouldn't pass the test. This is a pen from Montblanc. I think that looks really cool. This is a close-up of a Omega watch. We have a bit of misshapen text here. Again, we used a significant amount of tokens on other things, so we have to figure out the right token allocation strategy. This is a great image. The Louis Vuitton icon looks fantastic. That key pattern, though, didn't actually transfer itself to the luggage, but the leather bag on top looks really cool. The overall background scene, it could be Bangkok, it could be Jakarta, it could be New York, for example. That looks really cool. This is a Gucci leather jacket. We have a bit of misshapen logos here, so the iconic Gucci text is not clear, but other than that, it looks great. And if you were a graphic designer and you had these images as starting points, you could produce really cool marketing materials. This, I think, looks fantastic. We actually have no errors in this image. The only thing is really around whether or not this bag is accurate to the brand. I don't know if this is a Dior bag or which brand it is, so I need to double check that. But here we see a similar example, but the hand is detached, so we have to fix that. Another example, the Montblanc pen, the iconic star at the top of the pen is a little bit misshapen. Here's a Fendi bag, that looks pretty good. Louis Vuitton, a travel luxury suitcase, travel case. Here's the other example of that. So when we zoom in, we can actually allocate those tokens very precisely, and we can get some really good details. But when we have quite a lot of imagery inside the image, including lighting and backgrounds and other things, we don't yet have enough tokens to give it. Let me ask the. Looks like it's finished. Download those images and save them to this directory. Copy the path here. So I'm just prompting the MCP. Here we have. This actually looks pretty good. Here we're looking at some really sharp dressed models wearing the Prada clothing. So that looks pretty cool. This one's also quite good. Here we're instructing the AI gen model to focus less on creating humans. If we do have to have humans in the scene, let's limit it to maybe maximum about 2, and let's not spend tokens on their facial details, and let's even possibly have them facing the other way, just so that we can keep all of those tokens dedicated to the actual products here. This looks somewhat realistic, but just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't quite make sense, I guess. This one I think looks really good. This could definitely be in Bangkok. The Burberry coat here, though, is maybe a little warm. Bangkok maybe a little warm for this. This is we use some architectural themes from Celine, and this is a Omega watch, Comme des Garçons, the Prada one that we displayed earlier, and then the tag Hoyer. So let's go ahead and try this again, and then let's double check each of these. Yeah, that looks cool. Here's some more examples. That one looks really good. So we can see here we have great precision. The Omega logo is almost perfectly constructed. We heavily blurred the background so that we can dedicate most of the tokens to the watch face here. And we have the iconic watch smile where the hour hand is pointing at, 10 o'clock, and the minute hands are pointing at about 10 past the hour. That forms the iconic smile that you see in almost all imagery, marketing materials, advertising materials for watch faces. They tend to show this sort of smile with the hour hand and the minute hand, like that. This looks really cool, but we spent a significant amount of tokens generating the architecture in the background, and I think the logo on this briefcase is a bit misshapen, but overall this would look really good. And you have to imagine that the new rumored image generation model coming from OpenAI will likely address this. This looks really cool. This could be at the hotel or the park bench here in Bangkok. Here we are just displaying the Burberry jacket with the iconic checkered pattern or striped pattern sort of laying there on the bench without the human there. So that gives us all of the tokens we can dedicate towards the fabric, the materials, and the fashion of it. This one looks fantastic, but we just have some misshapen. So again, if you're a Photoshop expert, you have a high quality image, it saves you tons of time. All you have to do is just patch that up and you have something that's good to go. Here's a Fendi bag close up. You've got sort of the silhouette background, the sort of bokeh lighting effect with the blurred background lights. This looks fantastic. You could be at the garden, at the cafe, the Dior bag. You have the sunset in the background and the Dior scarf, silk scarf. This could work perfectly within a context of like Bangkok, Thailand. Another example of the bag. I believe that's probably a Prada bag. Yeah, this is the Tableau. This is a Gucci bag. Again, sort of nightlife in Bangkok. Doesn't perfectly match, but we could go with it. And then here is the Louis Vuitton. This one's going to be very difficult to produce because you have such detailed patterns with the LV logos, and then you're also having a lot of highly detailed leather work and stitching. So we're going to have to work on this, but I'm pretty confident we can get this solved with the right amount of prompting. And until the new models are released, we can do a lot of prompt engineering. Once the new models are available, then likely this will be addressed. As this problem will be totally addressed. Try downloading them again. I don't think it worked. All right, we're just going to ask it to find. Sometimes the agent will provide terminal commands that are not perfectly formatted for Mac, for example, Mac operating system, which I am in. Let's try it again. It didn't work. It should realize that it's not working, and it should figure out how to try that again. But in the meantime, we'll just run through these. As you can see, these beautifully generated images, and it continues to try simplify the download command. It isn't working. We want to grab these off of the server. The server is really important. The ShopBirdy MCP server is actually hosting these images. So I can actually go to mcp.shopbirdy.ai and navigate to my files where I have all of these generated. See, this is one of my favorite. I really like this. Okay, looks like we figured out the right download command. We are now pulling all of those images in and downloading them. So I've tried this on a few different runs. There's 12 different brands here. We've been trying them multiple runs. Essentially what we've done is we've created this run book call it a run book. It's like a playbook, but you basically are running through all these steps and giving the agent, the MCP, the model context provider, you're giving that agent all the context that it needs in terms of how to structure the prompts. What are the tools available to it? How should they save the files? What are the file formats? Other things could be like negative cues, like do not include these sorts of things, and also try to always include these other things. Like, for example, we don't want any ad copy, we don't want any call to actions. These are not necessarily direct response ads. These are more like brand advertising. So we want to really focus on the look and feel of the brand, not so much like creating a button that says download now or sign up now. That's a different form of direct response marketing. That's not what we're going for here. Here we're going for photorealism, billboard style scenes, advertising that prominently feature the product or the storefront signage, and somehow tie in the Bangkok landscape, the environment, the culture, that kind of thing, so that these are globally recognized brands, but they're suited for the local context. You could be a tourist, you could be a local. That's what hopefully you'd find the brand calls out to you, and you'd be interested in exploring that a little bit more. So that's really cool. I want to give you a sense of the speed of this. So let's go ahead and just try this one more time. Since you're possibly interested, I'm going to start a new chat with this, and all I'm going to do is explain to the agent here, in this case I'm using GPT-5 Mini, that you are connected to ShopBirdy MCP and you have the tools available. I want you to read this document and create a maximum of 1 image per brand. And that document contains lots of instructions. So it goes beyond just kind of giving an overview of each of the brands, the briefs. We do have that, but more than 50% of the document is really just around telling it about the tools and the steps and how to save the file names and that kind of thing, so that we can run through this iteratively. So it's running through the Create Image GPT tool, which is a tool that I've created that connects to the GPT Image 1 model, which is considered the best model out there right now, and it's able to write a prompt based on what it knows about Louis Vuitton, and it then creates the image. And so this is the image. In this case, it created a billboard image of the suitcase. To me, that wouldn't pass the quality assurance. So we would just run this again. Maybe we would tweak the prompt a little bit and be a little bit more specific about what we want to create. But the great thing about this is that it's completely agentic and it's generative. So if we don't like this particular image, no worries, we can just generate it again. And we're also running a QA on it, so that after it's generated, we're going to break down the image. We're going to see if it passes our tests. In this case, I didn't provide the exact QA pass fields, so it's going to have to try to figure out if it feels like this passes our test. The other thing I should do is, so this is an example of something that's failing the test. If it fails the test, it's going to try to regenerate that. So this is, I think, also important because you don't want to necessarily just generate these and ship them directly, right? You don't want to actually publish these without actually having someone take a look at them first. And at a very base level, you can have a different QA or different AI that didn't create the image, but uses a different AI. So in this case, I'm using Gemini from Google to verify that the OpenAI model created a proper image, and if it meets all the requirements. And if not, it will try it again. So in this case, it says it's possibly violating our rule. So there, it's going to go ahead and regenerate that. Proceeding to generate for Dior. So in this case, they seem to be really trying, the prompt is overly focusing on generating billboards. What we actually want is the image itself should be suitable for display on a billboard, but what this is doing is actually creating images of a billboard within the billboard. So it's kind of embedding two things into the same image, which is actually not what we want. Although you could technically use this to kind of mock up what the billboard would look like in the real world. So in some sense, it's not a complete waste. We can still use this, but it's not actually what we want to publish. We don't want to actually ship this to our marketing campaigns or push this to our out-of-home media, because this is not. But this is a great mock-up or visualization of what it could look like. So you could take, let's say you do have a lot of billboards, or you have like a digital signage around the city. You could create advertising for your media in the form of telling other brands, look at all the locations that I can display your advertising. It would look something like this. So you could use that in a meta way for sure, absolutely. So this is running through and creating the images. That one looks really good. I like this one. So this is the great example of this. You can just generate hundreds of these and figure out which ones that you actually like. You don't have to use all of them, but the more chances you have to generate, the more likely you'll find something that you like. So, and also the system can learn from what are the prompts that tend to lead to good results and what are the prompts that we need to tweak a little bit more. So overall, I think this is great. I really like, for example, my favorites so far have been this Dior bag with very simple, classy bag, beautiful background, wonderful silk scarf there. A lot of times you can add the scarf to the bag, to the handle, to keep the handle in good shape. And I think this looks really good. And I also like this Gucci silk cloth. That looks fantastic. I think these are some examples of where this model really shines. And then it's running the analysis and figuring out. Then it's going to go ahead and download all of these. which is super cool, super useful. And here's another example of that Gucci silk scarf or handkerchief, not sure exactly what it is, but here we are dedicating lots of tokens on the close-up of that. So with this agent, you can say, I have this single product, I want you to generate images from a variety of different angles, do a close-up of it, show it within a scene, add it next to another product, have it in different times of day or different lighting. So that gives you a whole variety of different ways to display and accessorize your products. Super cool. Just confirming that it's all there. Again, it's very probabilistic, so you keep it on guide rails, right? But you kind of have to let it do its thing and be creative and try a few different things. And by playing around with it a little bit and giving it a chance to, try and see what it can do, it starts to calibrate and learn. And then as you go, you'll understand where its strengths are and where it can improve, and you help guide it so that you can maximize what it's really good at, and you can try to help steer it so it avoids running into a wall or into a dead end. But overall, I think this is a fantastic example. Now the next thing is to figure out what those really strong prompts are and use those to create even better runbook to give it more examples of really high quality prompts and things to avoid. So through this generations and through iterating, you end up finding yourself in a place where you can generate really, really high quality images. And with the new model coming, it's only going to get better. So I hope this was enlightening. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys on the next video.